guys, Courtney Despos, Director of Education with Trouts Fly Fishing, and in this installment of Trouts Tips, we're going to be doing a single and double dry rig. As we move into a single dry rig, I've put a 7.5 foot 4X leader off of my line. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna attach our first dry. In this case, I'm attaching an Amy's Ant. We're gonna take our tag end, we're gonna put it through the eye of the hook, and we're gonna fold back on ourselves, and we're gonna proceed to do a clinch knot. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go around 4 to 5 times based on me working with a 4X leader. I'm gonna bring my tag end back through the opening between the eye of the hook and the beginning of my wraps. I'm gonna clamp that tag end against my fly. Make sure to lubricate my leader and tip it prior to setting my knot. Now that I've set my knot, you'll see that I have a bit of a tag there. I'm gonna trim this down. Again, if you're newer to fly fishing, still working through your knots, give yourself just a little bit more grace in that tag for safety of your knot in case it's not quite set. So when a trout comes and eats your fly and you go to set on that trout, you don't actually undo your knot and lose the fish. With that clinch knot, we now have a single dry. You could go ahead and put floating on this dry and head to the river and fish just this dry, but now I'm gonna show you how to attach a second dry if you opt into a double dry fly rig. As I move to my second dry, I'm gonna wanna make sure to use no thicker than 4X leader or tippet, because that is what I've tied here. So typically, you're gonna step down in diameter. So from my Amy's Ant to my elk hair caddis I'm about to put on, I'm actually gonna step down and put 5X tippet between the two. On the back of my pack, I have this nifty little tippet holder. It makes things a heck of a lot easier. I can just flip my waist pack. I can pull tippet off. I can go ahead and get that clinch knot started by doubling it over my finger, wrapping around that 5 times, bringing my tag in through the opening, and then setting a bit of that knot so that it's held. Now with that clinch knot started, all I have to do with my first fly is put the tip of the hook into that opening. It's now around the bend, grab my tag in, lubricate the knot, and set the knot. I can grab my nippers, I can go ahead and I can just trim that bit of tag end off so that we're good there. And now I can determine the distance between my 2 flies. Typically when we're throwing dries, a little bit longer is better. It's gonna help with your presentation, it's also gonna help with your drift. So typically I'm going 18 to 24 inches between the 2. Obviously the bit longer can be a little more complicated on your cast, but as you get more comfortable and you get better with your cast, you can learn to lay them out well. They'll drift at a distance to each other that looks more natural, and you're gonna have a better chance of catching trout. Once I make my distance between the 2, again, accounting a little extra for actually creating the knot, I'm gonna go ahead and take my tag end and just repeat the same process we did on our first dry. So I'm gonna get this tag in, I'm gonna run it through the eye of my elk hair caddis, bring it back on itself. I'm gonna wrap that 4 to 5 times again. You could go 5 to 6 since this is 5X if you'd like. Bring that tag end back through that loop between the eye of the fly and the beginning of the wraps. Hold that tag end against my fly, lubricate, and set my knot. Again, just like we did above, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna trim that tag end directly off. Now the key is with dries is we obviously want them to float. Most flies have some material in them that will absorb water, and therefore these will begin to sink. So you've probably heard of something called floating. The first type of floating I'm gonna use when I'm hitting the river is actually liquid floating. I love to use high and dry. You're gonna go 1 fly at a time, take the lid off, take your fly, and you're just gonna dip it right into that liquid, let it soak for a second, bounce it around, bring it out, let it drip off. I'm gonna move to my second fly. I'm gonna repeat that process. I'm gonna put my lid back on my floating. If this stuff spills, it's super greasy, but it definitely does the job really well. I'm gonna make sure that these actually dry out prior to casting them. I think that's where a lot of people kind of miss the mark. They put their floating on and then they head straight to the river and they start casting. The floating hasn't dried to actually allow the fly to become hydrophobic so that it floats. A lot of times, if I know I'm gonna be doing a dry, a double dry, or even a dry dropper, whether it's personally or on a guide trip, I'll actually pre-rig the night before, go ahead and dip my flies the night before and let them just soak and absorb and dry out overnight. If I do that, especially with the high and dry, my flies a lot of times, unless they're just getting hammered all day by toothy fish, will float all day and I just maybe have to shake them out once or twice. Thanks for joining us for this installment of Trouts Tips. For additional parts of this series, visit our Trouts YouTube channel and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hey!